Good morning to you all. Good morning in the Netherlands. Right, so yesterday, if you've seen my video, I've had a rough day with chess, that is. I've been playing quite well the last week or two, and just on the Thursday, I had five over the board games at my three at my club and two with a friend, and I won all five of them. So I went into my games yesterday online with a good feeling, but um, that was a bit of a deceit because I played six games, I believe, and I lost four, and I was playing very sloppy. I was blundering all over the place. I was not with it. Got into a tilt, so I was a bit hesitant to play this morning. But I've been granted some good luck this morning. It's 12 o'clock now. Going for lunch in a minute, I think, and I have going to see my parents in the afternoon. So I think I'm gonna call it a day because I'm on a win again. Got to a new high score of 11-15, and just feels right finishing this day with online chess with a win. But to be honest, I didn't really play that much chess. I played three games, but two games were just well, you'll see. It was just I've been I've been given 15 points because my opponents just didn't resign, but they abandoned the games in both cases for whatever reason. But I'm obviously happy to play chess, but I'm also happy to receive 3 points. So here we go. This is my first game. Played with, well, this doesn't really say anything, obviously, because it was a short game. But I played with 81.9 accuracy, 1650 elo. My opponent played even a little bit better, but we've only played a few moves. But I did want to say a few things about this because I did actually see a couple of nice tactics and I did want to share them with you. So, basic opening stuff. The King's Gambit, I'm not really familiar. I did actually step into a couple of the games where I actually did capture the pawn, and that's a major mistake. You should never do this um, because you get into trouble. I can't remember how, but you do get into trouble. Never ever take this pawn. I think, if I'm correctly, the best way to do is put this pawn over here on d5. But I'm not familiar with this. The king's, it's like the king's cabin declined if you put your pawn over there. But I'm not very familiar. I think you can get into some nice positions if the opponent doesn't know what they're doing. But I mean, if they're playing the king's gambit, I mean, obviously they do know what they're doing. I think the second best option is to put your pawn over here and just protect your pawn and take it from there. So that's what I did. Opponent brought the knight out. I brought the knight out. Oh, Stockfish even said I could take the pawn. That might be a difference now because this square is blocked. I'm not quite sure in what kind of trouble you get. Maybe if you accept it initially, you get into some trouble with the queen. I honestly can't remember. Anyway, brought the knight out, and my opponent brought its bishop out. And I did obviously see that my opponent probably was going to take it here. Or maybe actually first take me here, doubling my pawns, which is no problem because you're trading a bishop. Well, a knight for a bishop, which is always a good thing. Okay, you have double pawns, but that's not really a big issue. It's still quite a cluster. But I did think he was going to take it and then take this pawn. I'd capture and he'd be winning a pawn. So that was more of my concern. So I brought my queen out. Stockfish still wanted me to take the pawn, but I didn't really have the guts, to be honest. I didn't know what kind of trouble I would be potentially be getting into. My opponent brought this second knight out, and I did see I was very much undeveloped at the moment, but I did want to defend my knight, and any shenanigans with doubling with losing a pawn. Okay, so opponent attacking my queen and attacking this square for a potential fork. So nothing else I could do than retreat it completely. Then opponent captured the pawn, and I did see if I would capture it with the pawn. I think my opponent would capture my knight first, and if I recapture with the bishop, you'd still be winning a pawn. So, and I calculated if I take first with my knight, then if he would take, I could retake, and eventually I could just back this pawn up with this one to protect it. And obviously, any trades here, if this knight would be here, any trades here would be no problem. I could either capture with my queen or recapture it with my knight. So as well, so I did actually want to go for this line, which I did, and he recaptured it, and I he did capture it. I recaptured it. I did question whether I would take the bishop first or the knight first, but this is the way I did it. I thought like there's no harm, everything is protected, and this is where my opponent abandoned the game. Uh, Time nearly ran out. I mean, maybe he had to do some stuff or had a call or maybe he was working and his boss came along. I don't know. There's plenty of stuff that can happen why people abandon their games. But what I did see, obviously, there's a. I thought like if he would take me here, I could either take here or with the king. There's obviously a threat here for a fork. Uh, but I was, if he would take, I would just recapture with my queen and then take it from there. But if he or she would have moved um, the bishop back to say here, if my opponent wouldn't want to trade, I did actually see a nice tactic of giving a check, and two things can happen then. If my opponent was going to move, I would just retreat back again to save this fork. But if my opponent was going to block it, then I would have a check, and winning. Then my opponent would still have to move, and then I could either snatch the knight, depending on what the opponent did. If he would move the king into the line of fire, I would have went for the rook with a check and also win the knight. And if my opponent would have gone here, then obviously I couldn't take the knight, the rook, because it would be defended by the queen, and then I would have simply captured the knight. But none of this happened because my opponent abandoned the game. Second game. Um, So I'm playing as white. I've played 88.6, but this doesn't really mean anything because it was a short game again. Standard stuff. According to some people I follow who are not necessarily grandmasters, but 2000 rating on chess.com plus. As you can see, Stockfish wants you to go here. I think this is one of the worst squares. Giving a check apparently is like a very high elo kind of thing because you never want to really give a check without any purpose or any follow up. Because I can easily block it with the bishop, never with the knight, because then if you block it with the knight, you prevent your bishop from coming out. So that's what I did, bringing the stuff out and castling, just basic developing stuff. And I always like to do this because I really want my opponent to, as I said in the last video, to capture me so I can recapture with this pawn. Opening this file, if my opponent ever decides to castle, I have an open file. And if my opponent tries to pin my knight, I can step out of the way because it's still protected by the rook. So I'm quite happy that he castled. I just developed a little bit further. This guy was moving his queen about all over the place. Like, look at that. I mean, so many lost moves. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 moves with his queen. So, anyway, bringing the stuff out, just getting ready for some action. I did notice the Fianchetto's bishop, potentially eventually on the knight, but it was protected 3 times, so not to worry. I did want to actually reroute my knight to here because it wasn't doing anything here anymore with these pawns. Good trade, getting out of the way. I thought like I can push the knight back as I did, and then just getting out of the way. I did opt for this direction rather than this direction initially because I thought it would be more active, but my opponent did tell me to go back again. I didn't want to trade a bishop for a knight because obviously I could have just left it there and it was protected by my knight, but I like bishops, as I also do knights, but I do follow what the people say who are more experienced that bishops are mostly a little bit better than knights. Just developing, nothing really happens here. Offering a trade because obviously if the guy wouldn't want to trade but maybe move here, I'd have a nice fork and win a rook. So he captured, I recaptured, and that's how far the game goes because my opponent abandoned. Oh, he actually got disconnected. So he had probably poor internet. So he got disconnected, and then you get 2 minutes to sort your stuff out, but he or she didn't, and like. So I got my points back from yesterday. So I thought, like, what better way to just play one more game and maybe get to a new high score. And this is actually quite a nice game. He's resigned on 23rd. Yeah, that was a weird game. I think he also kind of abandoned the game because maybe he. Oh no! He made a blunder, a massive blunder, and it took me a while to find it. I nearly didn't find it, which is it was so obvious, but I nearly didn't find it. So playing as white again, d4 opening, standard stuff. I always, pretty much always start with the d4 pawn because I'm not familiar with the e4 pawn. Sorry, excuse me. I normally open with the e4 pawn because I'm not familiar with the d4 pawn. I don't like those openings. I might do later, but now sticking to my basics. Hoping for maybe a fight delivery kind of attack, but he is doing well. Standard stuff. Once again, bringing the bishop out, hoping for a capture. Because that's obviously if my opponent ever wants to push this pawn and bring out his bishop and pinning me, he or she cannot ever come here to pile the pressure because he's well defended. I like to play this way. Castling, just developing. So there you go. It's pinned, but not to worry. It's protected 3 times, and there's no one who can actually come over here and harass, put some more pressure on the pinned piece. PP on the PP, as some Indian guy says. Sadistic Tushy, I like him. PP on the PP, putting pressure on the pinned piece, but that's not possible here. So I was quite happy. Just developing and also making room for my bishop in case either you start pushing the pawns or maybe wanting to get rid of my bishop. Um, just getting the rooks connected. He's also connecting the rooks, all basic stuff, and I putting some pressure on the knight because obviously because of the queen he moved. If my opponent let me capture this, it'd be doubling pawns and opening up the king. So he didn't allow that. Recapture, offering a trade of pieces. I thought like, well, for some reason I kind of consider myself in most cases that my end games are quite good. Um, I do seem to, I think, I don't actually analyze it completely, but I have a feeling that in most cases, when I enter an end game with equal pieces, I tend to win most of them. So I thought, fair enough, trade pieces. And I just, what I wanted to do was at this moment, because the bishop is gone, no more pin, a good thing to do is just push this pawn, let it recapture, be captured and recaptured, undoubling your pawns. And this was just like a security reason to have any potential of any miscalculations on my side and maybe losing a pawn. But my opponent brought out this pawn, which is good because I could undouble my pawns. I know he would bring the rook out, but then I would just tease it away. That's what happened. He's retreating. And now no, not yet. What I did want to do, as Stockfish actually did recommend, I did want to reroute my knight over here on this nice square, where I could only be teased away with this pawn, but that would mean any pawn push in front of your king is weakening. So, and then I could see I could either retreat back here, but I thought like I might retreat back here to keep it on the offense also, and I thought like in order to prevent any eventual hanging pieces, I bring my queen here to protect it. That's my whole purpose for bringing my king here. But then he doubled his rooks, so if we go here now, he'd capture me, and I'd have to recapture with my queen and losing my queen. So that's not obviously what I wanted. So unfortunately, I had to go back. I did consider trading pieces to get into an endgame, and I obviously had to figure out what this was going to do with the knight. You can't go here, but you can go here and maybe come here and do some checkmate threats. So I thought like now is a good time to trade some pieces. As expected, he is going to go here and maybe eye on a checkmate threat. Um, so trading some pieces, I thought like trade some more pieces. He's bringing the knight out as expected, and I did see if I go here, I'm stepping into the line of fire. Um, and I obviously did consider he was going over here, but then I would just be able to protect it. Uh, and if I put my queen over here, everything is well defended. So that's what I did. And I also saw that if I'm putting it here, I'm actually eyeing this pawn. And then my opponent thought like, well, I can attack this pawn. It took me, hang on, uh, it took me quite some time to actually find the best move here. And if you don't see it straight away, give yourself a moment before I show you what the best move is in this position. But I was just I was worried about this pawn, thinking like, how can I protect this? I thought like I can move my knight over here, protect it, but then maybe he's teasing my knight away, and then this pawn is undefended. So I thought like, okay, well maybe I should bring my rook over here. And then I saw like, hang on, what about what about this one? So there you have it, and it was time to resign for my opponent. So there you have it, 11-15, new high score, ending on a winning streak. Even though the first two games were actually equal when my opponents abandoned the game. Time to make some lunch and do some shopping and go see my parents in the afternoon. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.